I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
It's Monday night, and that must mean that we are back live right here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Motorsports Madness, where we talk everything from NASCAR to IndyCar. We go four wheels, we go two wheels, we talk pavement, dirt, you want it. We've probably got it somewhere here in this convoluted mess that is the round table, but we wouldn't have it any other way. I'm Jacob Seelman, the voice of Speed77 Radio, and we're glad you're along for the ride this evening. I'm joined by my two co-hosts here at the round table, as always, Tom Baker and Kyle Souza, joining us tonight for this hour and a half of action-packed news, views, and an interview tonight, courtesy of our open-wheel reporter Joel Sebastianelli, that we talk about here on The Madness. Tom, I want to turn to you first off, and good evening to you, my friend. It's been a wild weekend from around the world of motorsports. Certainly, it's always exciting to be back here on a Monday night and break it all down, and a lot of fun things going on that we're going to get to in the next 90 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of fun things, a lot of maybe threatened fisticuff things, drivers wanting to beat each other in the face, drivers taking each other out, drivers being mad at each other, and that was all just over the weekend in NASCAR.
I know, right? It was wonderful, and we will get to all that in just a moment, because I know it took you and I a little bit by surprise just watching it, although I know the fans at Martinsville were certainly quite thrilled with the way some of the events went on Sunday afternoon. Kyle, I turn to you, and good evening to you as well. Certainly a lot of things to talk about on the NASCAR side. On the regional side, I know this weekend getting set to really kick the Northeast into high gear, and certainly glad to have you back on the program with us.
Well, good evening, Jacob. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, it's set to kick off this weekend. We were scheduled to go this past weekend at Waterford with the Valenti Modified Racing Series. Mother Nature playing havoc, postponing that until the 12th and the 13th. But we are set for Icebreaker Weekend at Thompson, one of the biggest weekends of the year. None better than it kicks off the New England season. Jacob, it's ready up here. People are starting to buzz. The cars are loading up, and we'll be at Thompson in just a couple short days.
Yes, we will be. Tom, let's turn to the NASCAR world for just a few minutes here, and I'll start with you this evening. We'll talk about a wild day of racing. You know, usually we break it up and have a little bit of a chance to breathe, but yesterday it was 750 laps of mayhem at Martinsville Speedway after the truck race got rained out on Saturday and pushed to Sunday immediately following the Sprint Cup Series 500-lap event. Let's start with the Cup race, because it was absolutely crazy action on Sunday afternoon. All Joe Gibbs front row, starting from the pole, was Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin alongside, and I tell you what, it was Joe Gibbs who started the day, but it was a pair of Chevrolets who ended the day, and you want to talk about highway robbery. I would say some guy that we like to call the outlaw committed it, and Jimmy Johnson was feeling a little bit lighter in that wallet at the end of the race on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, Kurt Busch winning at Martinsville. It just goes to show that on any given day, he has worked so hard to get a win there. And certainly, I don't think this could have come at a more appropriate time for him or a more opportune time because, of course, new team, new digs for Kurt Busch this year, a new lease on life. He hasn't really started off that well. It hasn't been that he hasn't been fast, but, a lot of DNFs, just not so much the performance aspect, but poor results, to say the least. And, boy, he certainly pulled it together. And, of course, Kurt Busch winning a race never does seem to be without some drama, does it? The irony was, of course, the beginning of the race, some damage in the left rear of the car, and him saying, we're done. Our day's done, pretty much. Kurt, calm down. You still got, 300 and some odd more laps to run, and he ends up winning the race. So again, never seems to be any love without pain in Kurt Busch's racing life, does there? But congratulations to that team. And again, now, like the rest of the drivers that have won this year, Kurt Busch is now virtually locked into the chase if he can just finish the top 30 in points, keep himself healthy, and that again allows that team now to play a bit more of a game of liar's poker, so to speak, take some more chances, do a little bit more bluffing, and Kurt Busch in that type of circumstance could be a lot of fun to watch the rest of the year, because we all know that Kurt's not a driver that lays back. He's going to give you 100% every lap. So you have to think that this might not be the last time we see Kurt Busch at victory lane with that car in 2014.
Oh, I'll tell you right now, it's definitely not the last time we're going to see Kurt Busch in victory lane, because a gambling Kurt Busch is a dangerous Kurt Busch, and when Kurt Busch gets dangerous, he usually finds himself near the front of the field. But Kyle, I want to turn to you, because amidst the drama of Kurt Busch actually winning the race over Jimmy Johnson, Kurt Busch had to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. Had a little bit of contact on pit road at lap 40 with the 2012 champion Brad Keselowski, and Kurt over the radio said, quote, "We're done," after that one, and Keselowski came back on track. There were hand signals flying, and there were fenders banging, and I guess at the end of the day, the lesson there is Kurt Busch gives new meaning to the phrase "one and done."
Yeah, Jacob, the interesting part about it was that the pit road circumstance really wasn't, like, the way I looked at it, really wasn't Kurt Busch's fault. It looked like Casey Kane tried to come into his stall. Keselowski was kind of there. And when he settled around on the side, Kurt get into him. He tried to turn to the right. Kurt was there. And when he turned around the edge of it, they made contact, and Keselowski's front end was pretty well destroyed about it. Sad part about it was Keselowski went to the garage, had some choice words for Kurt on Fox Sports on the TV, and then went out there and tried to, I don't know if he tried to wreck Kurt or he just tried to rattle his cage a little bit, and I think it worked for a little while, but the composure, Jacob, you mentioned the composure of Kurt Busch was outstanding yesterday afternoon. Came back and forth to the front, to the back with a pretty much a battered race car, which you can do at Martinsville. And Tom, that finished him and Jimmy Johnson battling one another. Personally, didn't think Kurt was going to be able to get by it, but for him to battle an 8-time master at Martinsville and finally get that win, Tom, it was impressive. Not only for Kurt, but for what that organization has done with now 4 cars behind its stable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, of course, Jimmy said that they were loose toward the end of the race, and you could see that by watching him. Kurt just had a little bit better race car, and he was not to be denied. I mean, Jimmy passed him back, and Kurt passed him back, and once Kurt made that last pass, he was able to just pull away just enough to keep a little distance between himself and the 48, so that even the last few laps of the race, where they went through some traffic, he was able to hang on and survive. And again, it was anybody that complains about the racing in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series this year just needs to, go watch Big Brother or something, because there's just, it's some of the best racing I've seen in NASCAR in a lot of years. And I think the fact that we are 6 races, 6 different winners speaks for itself. And the fact that we have a situation where the 2 newest additions to Stewart-Haas Racing have both put their car in victory lane in the first 6 races says a lot as well. Again, the cars now are such that you got race drivers driving and we're racing. It's not follow the leader. It's not, they're passing and they're on it, and it's just a different type of racing so far this year. And even the knockout qualifying, which I was a pretty outspoken critic of going into the season, hasn't been bad at all. It's been kind of entertaining, I guess, and certainly not the crash fest that I expected it to be. So I have to be impressed right now, Jacob, with the racing that NASCAR has put on in all of the series, but particularly in the Sprint Cup series this year. Usually we're talking about the Truck Series or the Nationwide Series and saying, this series puts on better shows than Cup. I don't think you can say that this year. NASCAR's got a pretty good thing going with the Sprint Cup Series, and I just hope they recognize that and keep going in that same direction, because 6 winners in 6 races is as good as it gets.
Yeah, it really is. But Tom, stop taking my points. I was going to make the point that the 2 newbies at SHR were going to victory lane. But anyhow, I will make this point. The fact that we are 6 races in, 6 different winners. It's the first time it's happened since 2003 when we set the record for most different winners to start a season, 10 different winners. So I'll take one from the stat book right there. But Kurt Busch over Jimmy Johnson. And coincidentally, the last time he won at Dover in 2011 for Team Penske, he also beat Jimmy Johnson. So 2 of Jimmy's favorite tracks, and Kurt Busch finding a way to school the master. I find it oddly appropriate that the same driver he beat before he went on his long winless drought is appropriately the same driver he beat to end the winless drought. So congratulations to Kurt Busch, but want to give a shout out, especially knowing how tough the weekend was for them, to both of the Richard Petty Motorsports cars, Marcos Ambrose and Eric Almirola, running in the top 10 all race long. Tom, doing certainly a bang-up job to honor the passing of Linda Petty, Richard's wife. I know Marcos and Eric both at times ran inside the top 5. I believe it was Eric that ended up finishing 8th on the afternoon. But just, shout out to the RPM cars, because it was a very hard weekend for them, but they took on the challenge admirably.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think there again, there's a team that's drastically improving, and to see both Marcus and Eric in contention on a short track like this says a lot about where RPM is as an organization, and I think they're only going to get better without a doubt. And those 2 guys are both, as far as I'm concerned, those 2 guys are both capable of getting a win on any given day at this point, and I think it's only a matter of time. Of course, Marcus has been to victory lane. That 43 car is going to get back there at some point this year. I really feel like that's going to happen for them. It's just going to be a question of when.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I believe it was the last time, 1999, I think it was, at Martinsville with John Andretti, I believe, was the last time the 43 car went to victory lane. I'm telling you, these stat books may be a little dusty, but I'll get there, I promise. So congratulations to the 2 RPM cars, but how about a shout-out to Dale Earnhardt Jr. adding his 4th top 3 finish in 6 races this season. He retakes the points lead, Kyle. I really, even after he won the Daytona 500, I wasn't a believer in what this 88 team was capable of, but now, after seeing the way he battled back at Martinsville, almost went a lap down at one point, fought all the way back to the podium, I'm a believer now. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is for real this year, and I don't want to go out on the limb and say he's going to do it yet, but I think Dale Jr. has a legitimate shot to win the championship this year.
Well, Jacob, he had those first 3 races finishing in the top 2, and realistically, when you look at it, could have won all 3 of the races if the cars would have went just a little bit different. They went to Bristol, had a shock problem, went a couple laps down trying to fix that, never really recovered from that late in the race. But even at Auto Club, the car was fast. They weren't in the right position when it came to the finish. But Martinsville, Friday afternoon, that car was trash. He was so upset on the radio. Even in knockout qualifying, he mentioned after that was one of the worst cars he'd ever driven at Martinsville. They needed a couple of tenths, he mentioned, to get towards the field. Whatever they did over Saturday, Steve Letarte was a little under the weather Friday. That could have had some impact on it, but really not too much. Whatever they did Saturday when they sat there and put their heads together in the rain, it worked. Because even from the start of the race to the finish, he came to the front. And Jacob, the more that race went on to the finish, that last run, he may have been just a tick better than the 41 and the 48 when they were battling up there at the front, wasting their stuff. He saved his stuff and he started closing, but just then the caution came out. They said that final pit stop, and even after that final pit stop, the 88 was strong, closing in on these guys. They battled side by side. He caught him. Lap traffic got a little bit in his way, but still a solid podium finish for Dale Jr. Leaves Martinsville with a points lead, and he's headed to Texas, where he's going to run both races, and where last year his car was really strong at points.
And oh, by the way, he got his first ever nationwide win and his first ever Sprint Cup win at Texas. So that's a track that has been very good to the Pied Piper over the years. With that, however, we will take our first caution flag of the night here on Motorsports Madness, but we got more NASCAR action to talk about in just a moment. When we come back, we'll discuss the truckers going to town at Martinsville in the dusk on Sunday afternoon. And, you know, we're seeing a championship contender back in the ball game now. That's coming up next as we talk the Kroger 250 on Motorsports Madness. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We'll be back right after this.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker,
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio.
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and Kyle Souza around the round table this evening as we talk everything from NASCAR to open wheel to two wheels to sprint cars. We've got it all here on the Madness, and that's why we're a little bit mad ourselves, just keeping up with everything. But it's a whole lot of fun. And Tom, as we talk truck racing now here on the Madness, how about this? There was nobody that attempted to run 750 laps in one day, but it would have been fun to see somebody try it, especially the way the weekend plays out. There was beating, there was banging, there were tempers flaring, just like there were in the Cup race. But when it was all said and done, the championship defense has officially begun.
Yeah, how about that, huh? I mean, you know, gone are the days when we put drivers in cars at certain tracks according to the situation. I would have given probably at least part of my right arm to see Ron Hornaday in a good Sprint Cup car at Martinsville. on Sunday. But yeah, how about that? What a race and what a finish! You know, when you're the defending champion and you can begin the defense of that title with a win on a short track where you would probably have assumed that wouldn't be so quick to happen. That's probably a good sign for the rest of your season. But I got to tell you what, as much as ThorSport ended up with a win, I think Turner Scott and their crop of young drivers showed a tremendous amount of talent and future championship potential throughout that race. But of course, we don't want to take anything away from anybody on the ThorSport team, because actually both of their drivers did very well at Martinsville.
Yeah, they did. And if you're keeping score, Matt Crafton won the race, by the way. Crafton grabbing his 4th career win. Amazing, it's only his 4th win with all the times we've talked about Matt Crafton over the years. Of course, the defending NASCAR Camping World Truck Series champion really starts this season off in style. He wasn't fantastic at Daytona. He was pretty good throughout that race, but Martinsville, I expected it to be the Timothy Peters show. We know how much the hometown hero loves coming home to Martinsville and stomping on everybody else's dreams and ambitions. Peters looked like he was going to do it for a while, too. Led a lot of laps and really dueled Crafton hard there in the closing laps, but couldn't make it stick. Drifted up the racetrack, Kyle, there at the end of that race on the green-white checker. It allowed Darrell Wallace to get by him, and then right at the very finish, Timothy Peters' podium run went awry, courtesy of his teammate, no less.
Well, the sad part about it for Peters was his truck was really, really good at one point in the race. When he got out front there, he chased down Johnny Sauter. They had a little bit of a tussle, you could say, something similar maybe to a feud that Kurt Busch and Brad Keselowski had earlier in the day, but in different way. They were bumping each other going for the lead. They moved each other out of the way a couple times. They swapped it back and forth, and then Peters' truck, and the Fox Sports 1 broadcast alluded to it there at the end, the truck just got so loose on that last couple of runs that he wasn't able to even come close to working the outside of Crafton, which was upsetting because Peters probably had the truck that could have beat Matt, and Matt really came out of nowhere in the last 70 laps of that race. It looked like it was going to be the Timothy Peters, Johnny Sauter, and Darrell Wallace Jr. show. Crafton was hanging around, but all of a sudden, Matt took the Menards truck to the outside of the racetrack. He went by a couple of cars mid-pack with fresh tires, and then he drove right by Peters into the lead and basically didn't give it up from there. So congratulations again to Matt Crafton, finally getting a victory at Martinsville. His career in the Truck Series has been good, of course, the defending champion, and it looks like he's set himself up, Jacob, not maybe for right away to go out there and win more races, but at least to be back in the championship fight, because I think a lot of people going into this season may have looked other ways with the young talent that was coming in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And, you know, Tom referenced it already. How about the Turner Scott Young Guns at the end of that race? Ben Kennedy finishing a career-best 3rd at Martinsville. Great run for the Florida native. But, Tom, you called it on our Thursday night show before the Camping World Truck Series race on Sunday that you said you thought Ben Rhodes was going to get a top 10 finish in this truck race. Well, what do you know? He finishes 7th at the end of that one.
Yeah, every once in a while the fog inside my crystal ball clears up just long enough to pull one of those out. But Ben Rhodes, look, Ben has... I probably look at different things or different criteria than what a lot of people would when I say things like that. And, you know, I spend a lot of time focusing on a driver's mental game and his approach and what I see of how he deals with certain situations. And, you know, I've had the chance to watch Ben from go-karts through, you know, legends and into late models and now into the K&N cars. And of course, getting his first opportunity in a truck. And Ben is he's cool under pressure, and he's just not afraid to, he's at the same time, he's just not afraid to toss it, you know, out on a limb when he has to. And you know, he managed to ruffle a few feathers during that race, I think. And, but he drove a masterful race the entire way, I thought, just keeping himself under control, not really trying to, venture too far outside of the comfort zone, so to speak, but yet keeping it in contention. And I thought he showed very well for himself. And, I really thought Brandon Jones had a good shot at a top 10 as well. Unfortunately, that was taken away through no fault of his own. But Kyle, certainly Ben showed the poise of a future Truck Series winner and even potential championship contender if he ever runs an entire season in the series, which I really wonder if that's going to happen at this point. I could almost see him kind of skipping through the trucks, doing a drop-by, but then eventually going pretty much straight to Nationwide, to be honest with you, Kyle.
Yeah, not only him, Tom, but these other young talents in the race. And I just want to give a shout-out also to maybe even John Hunter Nemechek finishing up there in the 12th spot. This young talent yesterday at Martinsville was out of control. There were the veterans such as Peters, Sauter, and Hornaday out there, but they were in the middle racing with these kids. Ben Kennedy, John Hunter Nemechek, Ben Rose, these guys were all in the middle of it, and it was great to watch the excitement yesterday at Martinsville. Myself kind of dulled out a little bit after the 500 laps. At the start of the truck race, it was kind of like, well, we're going to watch another 250. Hopefully this is exciting. They got strung out there for a while, but when they got to racing, it was really, really exciting. Just a quick note that I don't think we've mentioned so far and really hasn't come out of the media too much yet from Martinsville from yesterday, but Matt Crafton's truck passing post-race tech without a problem. The other three trucks, second, third, and fourth, Darrell Wallace Jr., Kennedy, and Johnny Sauter, had some suspension parts that were taken away. And Tom, I'll turn to you on this. Interesting to note, NASCAR comes out with penalties on Tuesday, so it'll be interesting to see if anything comes out of these suspension parts being taken. We really don't know anything else, but they were just taken at this point.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. I wanted to make a point, though, about you were talking about some of the other younger drivers, and we have not mentioned Cole Custer. And Jacob, you and I have talked about Cole a fair amount here recently and his potential. And I got to tell you, he certainly showed as much capability as any of the other young racers in that event. And I think Cole Custer is another one of those drivers. I mean, he's just 16 years old, but I thought he did a great job both in qualifying and in the race itself.
Yeah, he really did. Ran top 10 about 7th to 9th pretty much the entire race. Unfortunately, Custer's undoing came pretty much at the hands of one of the front bumpers from behind him. He and Gray Gaulding got together. Not the first time we've heard about that story, but they both went for a spin. That was the same incident that swept up Brandon Jones, who was racing right there with them at the time. I hated to see that for Cole because I thought it was about to be a really, really great day for Gene Haas. And in the end, I think it still was, because Cole proved that no matter what, he knows how to drive one of these things, and he proved a lot to a lot of people despite not getting the result that he ultimately deserved. Hated to see it for him, but all in all, I'd say that Gene Haas had a pretty darn good day. Finally got his company to victory lane, Tom, and has a young star who I think is really going to go places.
Yeah, I do too. I just thought that race, Kyle really alluded to it, that race was such a nice mix of guys like Ron Hornaday who are trying to make the best of what appeared to be, at least for the moment, a one-shot deal. I really, again, you had Hornaday, and then you had these younger drivers, and you had your Timothy Peters, who did very well, and of course the ThorSport trucks, both of them. Sauter had a good run. Excuse me. And so, they really showed well, but I think it was a good balance of the youth that's coming through the Truck Series and also the experienced guys that put on a great show. I think that series is going to be fun to watch the rest of the year, Jacob, for sure.
I really do. I think it's going to be great. Unfortunately, the next time we see them is the first week of May when they head to Kansas under the lights. I think that's going to be a great truck race. We always love it when they put the trucks under the lights. It seems like it brings a little bit of devilish attitude out in everybody. But with that, we're going to take another caution flag here on the Madness, and when we come back, we're going to turn to our resident wine and cheeser. Joel Sebastianelli joins us from Florida. He was at St. Pete this weekend, where he's going to talk IndyCar, Indy Lights, Formula One from Malaysia, and a lot more. Sebastianelli joins the Madness, and it's an all-new section of Open Wheel Central. Right after this, you are listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and we will be right back.
The odds of a young girl being discovered by an industry insider while singing to herself pumping gas? 1 in 300 million. The odds of the daughter of a clergyman from Severn, Maryland spending 11 weeks at number 1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of selling over 40 million records? 1 in 800,000. The odds of this musician and performer having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Autism Speaks. It's time to listen. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Steven, do you like dirt modifieds and sprint cars?
I sure do, Clint, but I like full fenders and late models, too.
Whoa. What about the super modifieds up at the Steel Palace?
You can find all of those and more with driver interviews on the Turn 5 Racing Podcast, released weekly on YouTube.com, Podbean.com, and on iTunes. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Turn 5 Podcast. Turn 5 is a proud partner of Race Chaser Online and Speed 77 Radio. Search Turn 5 Racing Podcast.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and Kyle Souza around the round table here tonight. But now we want to welcome in our resident open wheel expert and wine and cheeser back to the round table as part of this week's edition of Open Wheel Central here on the Madness. And boy, do we have a lot of racing action to talk about. Joel Sebastianelli back with us here on the Madness. Joel, a lot of exciting open wheel racing action this weekend, courtesy of not just the Verizon IndyCar Series season opener from St. Petersburg, but also the Formula One round 2 from Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. Certainly gave us a good bit to talk about, but also a little bit more of the same this weekend as well.
For sure. Of course, on the Formula One side of things, you have Mercedes 1-2, which is generally what we expected, at least at the beginning point of the season. They appear to be so far ahead of everybody else with the new technology and this new 2014 season. Over on the IndyCar side, it's 3 wins in a row now for Will Power, if you count carrying over from last season. Certainly picking up right where he left off. Didn't pull off the pole. It would have been 5 poles in a row if he was able to squeeze that out in qualifying, but I think he'll take the win over the pole any day. His second win at St. Petersburg.
Let's talk about the IndyCar race first. Obviously, returning to St. Petersburg for the season opener, and as you referenced, Will Power getting a dominating victory. Once he took the lead at lap 31, never looked back, took the win over Ryan Hunter-Reay, and Elio Castroneves, always strong at St. Petersburg, finishes third, the 3-time winner, but his teammate now joins him as a multi-time winner at the Florida Street Course. Will's momentum just absolutely unbelievable going back to last year, looking at the fact that bridging the seasons, he's got the 3 straight wins. Joel, is this the confidence booster that Will Power needs to possibly, finally, put it all together in a run for the season-long championship and maybe erase those 3 second-place finishes from his mind once and for all?
Well, of course, we're only 1 race into the season, but I think that it certainly could be. For a few years there, he finishes the runner-up, and the attention all the time was on, is this the time that Will Power can finally break through? He'd get asked questions about about that all the time. It was a storyline for every single race on the television side, and he was never able to stop thinking about it. And last season was a bit of a down year for him, but as he was saying in the press conference after the race, he actually kind of liked it. It was nice at the end of the season not to have the focus solely on him and whether or not he's going to essentially choke at the end or whether bad luck is going to strike one more time. He likes being away from the spotlight, and he was this weekend. The focus was much more on Helio Castroneves, who was a 3-time winner, Juan Pablo Montoya, his other teammate now with Penske, coming over from the NASCAR side of things and hopping into an open wheel cockpit for the first time in a decade almost. So the spotlight was not shining on him until he took the lead in that race and, of course, pulled away in front of everybody else, smoothly sailing out to about, I think at one point, about a 10-second gap almost over second position. So for Will Power, it's definitely a confidence boost. You can't ask for a better way to start the season. Whether or not it'll be a title-winning run, there's plenty of time in between now and the end of August. But can't ask for a much better start than that if you're the Aussie.
No, you can't, and can't ask for much for a better start to the season, especially now that you've got the series sponsor sponsoring your race car as well. Power in the Verizon-sponsored number 12, picking up the first win for Verizon as a series sponsor. So all's well that ends well on that front, you'd have to say. But you look at the pole sitter, Takuma Sato, and I know the day for him didn't end exactly the way he had hoped, but I have to say, 2 qualifying sessions in a row, 2 poles going back to last season and the first round in Houston. Gotta be encouraging for the Japanese native who is embarking on his second full season with AJ Foyt. I've got to think that that squad is a little bit more optimistic about what they can do. I know the wheels kind of fell off last year, but if they can keep some of what they started the year off, both last year and this year now, going, that there's a chance that Takuma Sato could be poised for something a little bit bigger in 2014.
We thought in 2013 he might be posed for something a little bit big. Don't forget, he was actually the points leader heading into the Indianapolis 500 before, like you said, the wheels just fell off. Almost literally, too. You had a couple incidents, a few retirements, finishing at the back of the field in most races with just about any possible problem that could befall a race team. The only top 10 he had in that final stretch of the season after Indianapolis was in Milwaukee. So for Takuma Sato, there's still the consistency issue, which if they can work that out this year, they could be not necessarily a team to beat, but or the team to beat, I should say. But in a league where there's so much parity, they can definitely be up front for some more race wins. But he won Long Beach last year. That's where the series will head in 2 weeks. So definitely throughout the entire weekend, he was in the top 3 for all 3 practice sessions, qualified on the pole. That AJ Foyt Enterprises machine is fast, and I think we'll see the 14 up front a little bit more this year, but he's got a lot of issues to work out in terms of consistency, both himself and that entire team before they're competitors for the title.
Turning before we head to Formula One to the undercard race for the IndyCar Series, looking at the Indy Lights race, you talk about a dominating performance in the IndyCar event, the Indy Lights event, even more so to speak. And, you know, we've talked all leading up to this season for Indy Lights, how it's a storyline of old versus new, and old faces versus new faces, new field sizes, looking at a bigger field for 2014, and, you know, a lot of contrasting views, so to speak, but at the end of the day, it was an old face in victory lane and a long-awaited first victory for Zach Veach after a wire-to-wire performance in St. Petersburg, the kind of performance that young man out of Ohio sorely needed.
Yes, exactly. That is really what he needed. It was a bit of a rough year last year at times, not finishing quite as high up as he wanted to in points, only getting 56 laps, all of those coming at the same race in Milwaukee. Led all 38 laps on what ended up being a time race in St. Petersburg on Sunday morning. Definitely the best way to start off the season for him and finally get that monkey off his back. He's been waiting for that victory for so long. Looks like he might get it at the Milwaukee Mile before the tires just completely wore out on him and Stage Karam moved around him for the victory on his 2013 title run. So for Veach, it's a confidence booster. You could see just when he walked into the media center, he was very happy, all smiles. Definitely looked a bit relieved more than related to finally have that victory. And especially when you have such a competitive teammate in Matthew Brabham, who was the 2013 Pro Mazda champion, lining up alongside him for the season with Andretti Autosport. He says the two of them are working together. similar to the way that him and Carlos Munoz did last year before Munoz jumped up to IndyCar. But when you have a teammate who's as competitive as Matthew Brabham will figure to be, to get that early edge is definitely a bit of an advantage mentally, just as much as it is in points as well.
And I know you got a chance to catch up with Zach following the Indy Lights event, so let's roll the tape and hear what Zach had to say following a huge first win.
With St. Petersburg Indy Lights winner Zach Veach. Zach, first of all, congratulations. Got to be great to finally get that first victory after a year in competition.
Yeah, I think last year was a real learning ground for us. We made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot, so we just put that all into preparation to pull off a perfect 2014 season. And I think right now we're starting it off on the right page. We just got to continue with our momentum going forward.
You mentioned that it's a learning ground. What sort of things did you learn, especially with Carlos Munoz, who I understand has some sort of a influence on you as a driver?
Oh yeah, Carlos, I wouldn't call him my hero because he's a really good friend of mine, but him and Santi, his driver coach, they've just really pushed me and they taught me a lot along the way, and I'm just very thankful for that because I'm really looking forward to the day I get to call Carlos a real teammate again, and this is all because of him. I learned from him and he kind of gave me the mindset I needed to be able to do this today.
Speaking of teammates, you have your new teammate this year, 2013 Pro Masi champion Matthew Brabham. What sort of relationship do you two have on race weekends, even though we're only one weekend into the season?
Yeah, I think our relationship's a lot like mine and Carlos's was. He just, speaks a little better English. Matt, he's a great kid. He knows how to have a lot of fun and he knows when to be serious. So, I think he's going to help me just as much as I'll help him this season. And, with a name like Brabham, he's got, a lot of family history that helps us out as well. And, I'm just happy to be a part of that.
How confident do you feel about the rest of the year?
We got to take it one race at a time, but, I think what helped us this weekend was my mindset going in. I didn't want to come in and say, well, maybe we'll win, we'll see what happens. I came in, I say, hey, I'm going to win. And I think that positive thinking really helped a ton, and I think we're going to go into Long Beach with the same attitude and, take it day by day then.
With so much of the weekend washed out this weekend, what sort of knowledge did you have of the track and how it was going to be driving, at least specific to this one race?
A lot of it was just from last year, because, like I said, we learned from a season. A season experience helps a ton, and throughout the race last year, I burned my tires off rather quickly, and then I got exhausted pretty quick as well. So, I had Michael on the radio kind of screaming at me, telling me to conserve my tires, and I was making sure I was doing everything I can to just stay focused, and it was an easy win for us.
After you got underneath Gabby on lap 1, there was the caution that came out right away for the incident exiting turn number 3. Were you worried on the restart at all about anybody catching you and possibly Gabby dipping down to the inside just like you did to him?
Yes, for sure. I knew I kind of learned from watching Gabby go into 1, so I broke a little bit early, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't give it up on the restart, because here at St. Pete it's really hard to get around someone if the cars are similar speed, and you have to use the restarts to your advantage for that. So I thought Gabby and we've been within a couple of tenths all weekend, so I don't think that it was going to be an easy pass if I was having to chase him down. So I wanted to make sure we got it done at the beginning, and we kept it there on all the restarts.
Zach Veach, Indy Lights winner in St. Petersburg. Zach, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, Joel, now looking forward to the Formula One race from Malaysia over the weekend, or looking back, I guess you could also say. But we talked about Mercedes. We talked about Mercedes in Australia. And we're still talking about Mercedes. Except this time we're talking about the Mercedes driver that we thought we'd be talking about from the beginning, in the form of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton, who had mechanical failures end his day in Australia, gets everything back on track and leads the 1-2 for the Silver Arrows in Sepang, a dominating victory. Wins it by over 17 seconds, Joel. This is exactly what the Silver Arrows were looking for, and it still seems like no matter what anybody else throws at them right here at the start of 2014, they're the ones who has their act together more so than anybody else. And Joel, Lewis Hamilton, certainly glad to be back on the top step of the podium as well.
Victorious by 17 seconds, started on the pole in a sopping wet qualifying session. And although weather didn't play quite as big a factor on Sunday, Lewis Hamilton still the man to beat. Don't forget about Nico Rosberg, though. Nico, of course, won in Australia, the season opener, finishing second this time for Silver Arrows 1-2. I still think that although Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton as a team are the drivers to beat, I think that Nico's consistency is going to end up being the factor as we go down the stretch for this title run, especially if Mercedes pulls away a little bit more. Lewis has I think it's an 18-point deficit now to Nico Rosberg, which essentially, if you factor out the points this way, if Lewis Hamilton were to finish second and Nico Rosberg were to DNF, Lewis Hamilton would be tied. Now, I know that there's months and months ahead for the season, but I don't want anybody to sleep on Nico Rosberg, because while Lewis Hamilton gets all the attention, and certainly will deservedly so this week for dominating the field, Nico Rosberg, certainly a teammate that I think doesn't get quite enough credit for the job he's done with Mercedes. Sebastian Vettel, too, running in third, qualified second. Here we are talking about Red Bull and how miserable they've been all season during the preseason testing, and in just about every single location, every session, they haven't been anywhere near where they've wanted to be. They've had a myriad problems. But for Sebastian Vettel, it's got to be a confidence booster to finally get on the podium early on, just as Daniel Ricciardo did before being stripped of his podium in Australia. So if you flash back 2 years ago, 2012, Ferrari was not quite as poor as Red Bull, but definitely had their fair share of difficulties in preseason testing, and Fernando Alonso ended up winning this race. It appears as though, even though Vettel didn't win, this is a race similar to what Ferrari had in 2 years ago, where you say, you know what, maybe this team isn't quite as gloom and doom as we thought they were just a month ago at the start of the season.
I would have to agree with you, Joel. I think Red Bull is on the comeback trail, and you know, when you have a driver as talented as Sebastian Vettel, it's only going to be a matter of time before the team figures out the little bit of problems and the driver can even start to carry them just a little bit, barring any weird mechanical failures or something like that. So optimism for Sebastian Vettel after a third place finish. And Formula One now, just like IndyCar, going to have a turn of pace now, so to speak. We know IndyCar going to head in 2 weeks to Long Beach for the next round of their season, along with the Tudor United Sports Car Championship Indy Lights. Going to be a very jam-packed weekend in Long Beach, but Formula One goes this weekend to Bahrain for round 3 of their season. What should we expect out of Bahrain, and or is it basically going to be more of the same? Are we going to see everybody trying to chase Mercedes once again?
I think that you'll see something a little bit similar to that. Of course, we know that Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, as we've established many times, the team to beat. However, this has been Sebastian Vettel's track the last 2 years. Red Bull's been strong. He's led just about every lap in 2012 and 2013. So if Vettel was that strong in Malaysia, of course, I think weather played a big factor there. However, I would expect to see Red Bull, this being an even better litmus test than Malaysia was, because if Red Bull can find their way onto the podium again with either Daniel Ricciardo or Sebastian Vettel, that's certainly going to say a lot about this team's effort. Mercedes really hasn't run that well here. Nico Rosberg finished in 5th here in 2012. I think Lewis Hamilton, back when he was with Mercedes, only finished someplace on the outskirts of the top 10 then. Whereas if you look at 2013, of course, this race wasn't held in 2000, and it was more the same with Sebastian Vettel. But Lewis Hamilton again up in 5th, and Nico Rosberg only on the outskirts of the top 10 and 9th. So even though this season's definitely changed, the cars have changed, this hasn't been a great track for either of those two drivers. So maybe this is a time that somebody else sneaks in there and pulls off a victory. But Mercedes is definitely the class of the field, and I don't think it would shock anybody if Lewis or Nico found their way to the top step of the podium once again 3 races into the year.
And we know you'll be following it this weekend. Of course, the Bahrain Grand Prix will take the green flag on Sunday. That's April the 6th, this coming Sunday. Joel, as always, appreciate your analysis and certainly some of the inside stories from St. Petersburg this weekend as well. Going to be rolling a feature on Connor Daly out here in the next day or so on Race Chaser Online. I know you were really excited to sit down and talk to Connor about his outlook on the rest of the season. I know that's a young man that's looking so hard. He wants an opportunity where so many have just dried up here in the last 12 to 18 months. And certainly, while he wasn't behind the wheel of a race car this weekend, always good to see him in the paddock, and looking forward to see him on track here as well in 2014, because it's been a long ride for him.
It truly has. After so many years of rising up the ladder and being ordained as the brightest open-wheel star for the United States of America, now the 22-year-old is simply waiting for anything, any opportunity to drive anywhere. As he said to me, he's on a self-proclaimed job hunt it's just a job fair for him at the IndyCar Series, walking around the paddock area. Definitely generous enough to give us a few minutes of his time and catch up with him. Really nice guy. I think a lot of people hope for the best, if for no other reason because of the stars and bars that are ordained on his helmet, the jersey. If you're a part of American motorsport, you've got to be rooting for Connor Daly, Alexander Rossi, any of these guys to break through, because at least as far as overseas motorsports, there's not a lot of money that American companies are willing to throw in right now, and that's been Connor's biggest issue. It's sponsorship. If he had the sponsorship and the dollars to bring along with his driving talent, he'd be racing somewhere, whether it's GP2, another season in GP3, perhaps the IndyCar Series, heck, even Indy Lights. But unfortunately for Connor Daly, there's just nothing that's materializing, and a lot of that has to do with sponsorship. So, at least, if nothing else, you'd love to see him on the Indianapolis 500, but he's got to have something materialize. He seems optimistic, though, that there may even be a chance that he'd be racing in Bahrain this coming weekend, so time will tell, but Connor Daly's certainly a guy who needs a little bit of luck on his side now to find something for the upcoming year to race in.
And we'll see how the luck on everyone's side plays out this weekend for Formula One, and then, of course, the IndyCar Series returning in action in 2 weeks' time at Long Beach. Joel, as always, appreciate your insight, and glad to see you back safely from this weekend in St. Petersburg, and we'll look forward to talking to you on the show next Monday night following what we hope is going to be a much more thrilling Bahrain Grand Prix than in years past.
Well, the field is as wide open as ever in Formula One, especially considering some of the struggles that Mercedes has had here at times. So I think that more so than any other race, even more so than Australia, at least in Australia, there was the fact that you had the technical regulations, and there was a lot of uncertainty over who would finish. But considering who will finish where, I think this is the most wide open event we've had so far, because the teams that are typically strong at Bahrain aren't as strong this year, and the teams that aren't as strong are definitely pacing the field right now. So time will tell, but it's going to be a great weekend for open wheel racing, as is any weekend with racing anywhere in the world.
And with that, we will take a break here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We'll be back in 15 seconds after this pause for station identification. You are listening to Motorsports Madness on Speed 77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We are your home for motorsports.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to the madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. I'll tell you what, Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, Kyle Souza around the round table. And Kyle, I'm going to turn to you now because we're getting ready for a big, big weekend here on the northeast side of motorsports and a big weekend in modified racing. I'm excited about this weekend because the Wheel and Modified Tour is back after a long off season. The Mod Squad going to take to the track this weekend for the Icebreaker at Thompson, and from what I understand, the field stands at 27 right now and potentially growing before Sunday afternoon's event. But some familiar names finally dotting this entry list that we weren't sure we were going to see right off.
Well, Jacob, a release put out by NASCAR, PR Jason Cunningham this afternoon, the PR man for the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Northern Southern Tour. Let me just take you quickly through what that went over this afternoon. So this weekend, the annual Icebreaker 150 for the Wheel and Modified Tour, Sunday afternoon, time trials going on Saturday at 5:15. The race Sunday afternoon at approximately 4 Eastern Time. Fun facts about Thompson. If you have never been to Thompson, it's a 0.625 mile bank to oval that was opened way back in 1940. The maximum starting field for the event is 37. Jacob, you mentioned we're at 27 right now, so I don't think we're going to get to that. It's scheduled for 150 lap, and the tire change rule is 3 tires that you can change during the event for any position. There have been 33 different winners at the Thompson Speedway, and the Icebreaker, led by Mike Stefanik's 15 victories. Stefanik is the most recent winner of the Icebreaker. There have been 41 different pole winners at the Thompson Speedway for Icebreaker weekend. Now, Jacob, let's dive into this entry list just a little bit. Maybe not too many surprises on it. It was announced that Ed Marceo was going to sponsor Mike Stefanik and get him behind the wheel of number 1, the Caddy's Tavern Chevrolet. Doug Colby's on the list, the winner at the Battle of the Beach. Donnie Leah, Ronnie Silk, Teddy Christopher hooks up with Robert Caton Jr. to drive car number 13. We'll see Tommy Barrett go back at it in car number 22. Bobby Santos returns to the tour. Keith Rocco goes behind the wheel of the Wheelers Auto. Mr. Rooter, Chevrolet, car number 48. Matt Hirschman, Money Matt, car number 52 for Wayne Darling. Justin Bonsignor for Kenny Master in the 51. Jimmy Zacharias, Rowan Pennick, Woody Pitcat. Jacob, this field is stacked with modified greats, and it's time for the icebreaker this weekend. This race kicks off the season, but it also is usually one of the best ones. These guys looking to get out there and pound the ground one more time this night at the weekend.
Yeah, they are. I am so excited to see Mike Stefanik and Ted Christopher on the entry list. I can't even fake it. Stefanik hooking up with his old car owner. This is going back a few years, Kyle, I know. Ed Marceau to run that number 1 machine, and TC, Ted Christopher, going to be behind the wheel of the number 13 that he made famous many a time on the Whelen Modified Tour. I know so many people remember him driving the number 36 to prominence when he won his championship, but he started his time on the tour in the 13, and now, courtesy of Robert Caton Jr., it's back again.
Yeah, Jacob, and we take a look a little bit deeper into this entry list. I mentioned Keith Rocco. John Rufano's number 48. Rocco, a longtime competitor at Thompson in the SK division. He's going to be strong in the 48. Justin Bonsignor, going to run full-time with the Valenti Modified Racing Series this coming season, but he's there. One driver I didn't mention, I don't know how I missed him, the defending champion, Ryan Preece, Berlin, Connecticut, in the East, West Marine, Metals Ford. Eric Sanderson listed as the owner of that car. Preece slides in that number 16. The Jet, Jamie Tomato, in the entry list. Rowan Pennick, last year at Thompson, had a brutal flip in the Bud 150 in August. He returns behind car number 93. And the driver TBD, as I take a look at this entry list, the bowler entry, all blue, the Cape Cod Copper Chevrolet car number 3, listed as a to be determined for a driver. I don't know where that's going, Jacob, but that could be interesting in the coming days.
It could be very interesting, and it probably will be very interesting because the old Bowler Racing Enterprises crew holds their cards usually very close to the vest, so I doubt we might know before Thursday or Friday who's going to be behind the wheel of Old Blue, but it's going to be very, very, very interesting to find out who gets behind the wheel of that machine because we know it's proven equipment. Tom, I want to turn to you for a second right here. Kyle's talked about some of the names on the list. Who do you look for as one of the favorites to potentially take the checkered flag after 150 laps on Sunday afternoon?
Oh, boy. Well, you could stop just short of throwing all the names in a hat and then just flipping them all up in the air, and whichever one hits the floor first, pick them. I mean, you've got all of the current guys, plus of course you throw in Mike Stefanik and Ted Christopher, and you never want to count those guys out of any race that they enter. I don't care if it's their first time in a car, it's a brand new car, it's a radical car, whatever it is, you got 3 wheels on the car. Those guys can just flat drive, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, you know what, I think one of those 2 guys is going to take the victory, either Stefanik or Teddy Christopher. The Icebreaker is one of those races that just stories write themselves, it seems. And how much bigger of a story could you write than either Mike Stefanik or Teddy Christopher going to victory lane at Thompson in the Icebreaker this weekend?
And for Stefanik, we might even go so far as to say, again, as Kyle referenced, he is the defending winner of this race. Wouldn't it be so appropriate as Stefanik scales back his schedule to see him get one more legendary win in the Icebreaker, Kyle? But I know, as excited as we are for Icebreaker weekend this weekend, it's going to be heavy hearts in the New England racing community this weekend as well, especially around your home track.
Yeah, Jacob, coming out this past Friday evening, and it unfortunately had been kind of awaited, something that was coming and finally happened this past Friday evening. A soundburst state here for New England, and not only for the whole New England area, but especially, you mentioned it, my home track, the Seekonk Speedway, lost one of the co-founders and who was the current president of the Action Track of the East. Irene Vendetti passed away this past Friday evening peacefully in her sleep. Irene left a long legacy, not only at Seekonk, but throughout New England. A member of the New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame. Just a couple of years ago, she was inducted there. Irene built the Seekonk Speedway with her husband, Dee Anthony. They had a dream. They put it together, and we play in that playground now. Heavy hearts not only at Thompson this weekend, but this coming Saturday, Seekonk opens up for business. I'll be in the house up on the stand, and it's just going to have a different feeling without Irene there. But our thoughts and prayers to the Vendetti family in this tough time, and we have to thank Irene. She built this playground for us. She's been at the track the last couple of years. Even though she had been on her way out, Irene was still there, sitting in her front stretch seat. And Jacob, when we head there this year, she's going to be there watching over the Action Track of the East. Now her and Dee Anthony watching over. She leaves it in the hands of her son, Francis. And it's just a somber note, not only for this community, but we lost Linda Penny and Bobby Waltrip last week. And the deaths just, unfortunately, keep coming on in the motorsports world. So once again, our thoughts and prayers with the Vendetti family, Jacob, during this tough time.
Absolutely agree with you, Kyle, there. And as we head to commercial, all of us here at Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online do offer our sincerest condolences to the entire Seekonk Speedway family on the passing of Irene Vendetti. And just our thoughts and prayers are with the entire racing community in the Northeast as we head to commercial. When we come back, we'll have more from Motorsports Madness and the rest of our cast. We'll be back right after this.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and Kyle Souza sitting around the round table, and our cozy little chat has been joined now by Stephen Ovens and the gang from the Turn 5 Racing Podcast, Clint Miller, Stephen Ovens, and everybody that talks about the down and dirty action from around the world of motorsports as we welcome our friends back here to the madness. It always gets a little bit crazy when we talk about dirt, Stephen, and there was some crazy action going on all weekend long from the dirt world. Of course, Mother Nature has to interfere a little bit on that side too, but overall, some really great racing this weekend.
Yeah, you betcha. Mother Nature certainly making her presence known this past weekend. She claimed both the show with the World of Outlaw sprint cars as well as the World of Outlaw late models.
She's an evil woman.
She can be a little moody at times. And certainly we're seeing that up here in the local racing scene as well. But, one comparison I wanted to make, we're in the middle of March Madness right now, and it seems like upsets have been the theme. Well, let me tell you, upset was definitely the theme the other night when David Gravel pulled down a win out there at Merced Speedway.
Yeah, I was completely blown away when I heard that David Gravel had won the event Friday night at Merced. Not only does it stop a win streak by Sammy Swindell, but, we're so used to David Gravel being good when we go to the Northeast. Pennsylvania, all the tracks up there, we're used to Gravel along with those Pennsylvania posse guys. That's where they're so good. That's their wheelhouse. And we didn't expect Gravel to go out to the West Coast, to Merced Speedway of all places, and pick up a victory. I agree with you. It was a huge upset, but certainly one that was very well deserved. He worked his way to the front of the field, and he didn't just luck into that win, Stephen. He flat earned it.
Yeah, I think I followed some of it there the other night, and I think he set quick time, and he really had a really fast car the whole show. But I don't think he's ever been out on the West Coast with a quality team. And I think this is the one that Bell was driving for before he left. I'm not positive.
Yes, it was, as a matter of fact. And actually, that car this weekend honoring the late Stephen Allard as well. So a double win in a way for David Gravel, honoring the late Stephen Allard, a great friend to the sprint car community. But yes, that is in fact the Bell team that Gravel was driving for, and we know how good that equipment is.
Didn't Gravel drive for Rose last year when he got hurt up here in the Northeast?
He did. Yeah. Filled in for Bill Rose. Once Rose got hurt, that was Gravel's ride pretty much for the rest of the season. We saw Rose come back real late, try to attempt one or two shows there at the end of the year, but that was the ride that David Gravel hopped in for most of the season. Wasn't great, wasn't horrible, but I think Friday night we saw how great David Gravel can really be now that he's got the equipment underneath him.
Yeah, and it's great to see him get that win out on the West Coast and really prove that no matter where he goes. I mean, a couple years ago had a great run out at the Rolling Wheels Raceway, as we talked about up here in the Northeast, and it was just one of those runs that he had up here where it's like, if that guy can get into a quality ride for the whole season, he could really turn some heads and have some great runs. And I think he proved that on Friday night. And, it just adds to that story that we've been following all season long with parity in the world of outlaw sprint cars.
Yeah, the parity keeps growing, and I want to turn to Tom for a second, because it's not just parity in the Outlaws. It's not just parity in one series. Like we'll see one series get on a roll like IndyCar did last year and have so many different winners. But this year, it looks like it's parity everywhere. IndyCar, NASCAR, sprint cars, late models. It doesn't matter where you look. There's surprises happening every week so far this year.
Yeah, it certainly has been a very entertaining racing season so far, at least through the first quarter or so, if you want to look at it as a calendar year full of quarters every 3 months. We're basically through the first quarter in January, February, and March have certainly produced some real surprises and some real good, strong, side-by-side racing in all series and all divisions, top to bottom across the country, really. I mean, all I'm waiting for now is for the Northeast to thaw out up there, Stephen, and see some good, strong racing up there as well. I mean, so much to look at this year. Probably 10 to a dozen new cars scheduled to debut at Oswego in the super modified class, and Jessica Zemkin getting her first start, and of course all the dirt track stuff that's going on up there with Rolling Wheels and Weed Sport and Utica Rome going NASCAR. I mean, just everywhere you look, Black Rock now with Dan Harpel back. Stephen, it's just going to be a fantastic season up there with a lot of things to look at as far as new storylines to follow as things get thawed out up there in the New York area.
Yeah, you got that right. And I got to say that I can't remember a season in the last, I'm going to say 5 years or better, Clint,
5 to 10.
Where there's been this much positivity, and it's not just at one track, it's all over the place. You've got Dan Harpel taking over at Black Rock, which is literally 15 minutes from where we live here and shoot our podcast from. You've got all those new cars that are coming in at Oswego, all of the changes that are going to be happening up there for Classic Weekend, and who's going to qualify and who gets a guaranteed spot, and
what surprise is going to show up.
Right, exactly. I really can't remember a season or a preseason that had so many positive things happen. And I know a lot of that is for us. We're excited about what's happening on our local level, but yeah, you're right, Tom. You look around and there's just really good stories to talk about. And coming from our side of it here with the radio and Race Chaser Online, there's so many good things to write and talk about and interact with the race fans that follow us.
Absolutely agree. And actually, one of those things that is going to tie in, I want to talk about here, Stephen, because this weekend, I know you guys are going to be providing us some racing coverage as the season in the Northeast really gets going. Talk a little bit about where y'all are going to be this weekend.
Well, this weekend, Clint and I are making our maiden voyage out to the the Orange County Fair Speedway, out in Middletown, New York. It's about roughly 4 hours from where we reside, and we are going to be providing, as we like to call it, blow out the budget coverage of the Hard Clay Open out there at Orange County. We're going to be doing a little video documentary of the day. We plan on doing some pre-race and post-race coverage, and certainly we're going to have a lot of audio interviews and written report for Race Chaser Online and for the podcast here. And believe me, boys, we're going to have a lot to talk about next Monday.
Yeah, we talked to Brett Deo a little bit ago, and they said that for a late fee to get into the race, the registration is only $5 more than it was if you registered early. Typically, you have 20 cars register early, and they get like 70 to 75 cars that show up at the track. He's already got 40 signed up for tonight, or signed up for this weekend, so not counting all those that show up out of the blue. So this has the makings to be a huge show.
It does, and the other thing that's going to make this show unique, it's an open tire. You can run sail panels if you want. There's no minimum height to your sail panels. No minimum height. There is a maximum height to your sail panels that you can run. You could run a big block engine. You could run a small block engine.
Somebody's going to run a spec motor.
You could run a spec motor. You could run Hoosiers. You could run American Racers. And they're qualifying by passing points. It is going to be one of the more unique shows that any time during the season you're going to be able to see. And happening at Orange County, at Orange County, where Brett Hearn is going for his 300th win. So many things we could talk about going into it.
There's always plenty of things we can talk about. It's Northeastern Dirt Motorsports. There's about 50 storylines a weekend we can talk about, it seems like, up there, Stephen. I know you guys are really, really excited to get up there. I'm excited to see how it all shakes out this weekend. And I know getting closer and closer to the big block season getting started, too. You know, you mentioned Brett Hearn, the multi-time, all-time champion of the Dirt Car Series. And as we wait for that to start up here, that's coming soon. I know you guys are just as excited to get that rolling and underway for 2014 as well.
Yeah, the opening show for the Super Dirt Car Modified Series is April 26th, and they open their season for the series at the Fulton Speedway. We hope to be out there and check that out. And then a lot of tracks here locally are going to be opening up over the next couple weeks. A couple tracks that had some open practice sessions for this coming weekend have kind of had to pull the plug on that until we get thawed out and dried up and try and get some warm days. But warm weather's coming, so we're not that far off.
We're not that far off. The frost is melting, and we're going to get racing. I know we're going to get racing, and I know you guys are going to be down there at the Orange County Fair this weekend for the Hard Clay Open. Steve and Clint, I know you guys are excited to be there. We're excited to have you there covering all the action for Speed77 Radio, Race Chaser Online, and the Turn 5 Racing Podcast. And I know you guys are getting ready to release another episode of the Turn 5 Podcast as well. What can fans expect to see from you guys coming up?
Well, we opened this week's show talking with Brett Deo, who is the promoter of the VP Race Fuel Short Track Super Series, which the Hard Clay Open is event number 1 on that series. So we opened up the show with him tonight, and then we made our way around some of the race benefits up here in our area, up here in the Finger Lakes. Got some great interviews with a lot of popular local drivers up here. And then we're closing out the show tonight with Eric Rudolph, who tells us about his 2014 plans, which include TQ midgets, asphalt modifieds, dirt small block modifieds, and most exciting to us, dirt big block modifieds.
Yep, in our own Canandaigua.
That's right.
It's going to be fun, and we actually also had coverage on your guys' talk with Eric Rudolph. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, they can either check out the Turn 5 Racing Podcast or head over to racechaseronline.com and see what all Eric Rudolph's going to be up to for 2014. Guys, as always, appreciate your time on the madness, and look forward to seeing all the coverage from this weekend's Hard Clay Open. I'm excited to get the Northeast dirt racing season underway.
Yep, we will have a full report for you next Monday night on the Madness.
Tom, before we take this dirt segment to commercial and get ready to wrap things up here tonight on the Madness, do want to talk about the two-wheel dirt action from over the weekend, and I want to talk about a driver who is setting the gold standard, and I do mean that in a big way. Career win number 50 on Saturday night in St. Louis for James Stewart. 5th win of the season from a guy who last year couldn't get out of his own way for most of the Supercross season. I tip my hat to James Stewart for not only eclipsing Ricky Carmichael and going to second on the all-time win list, but now doing something only one other driver, the King, Jeremy McGrath, has done in Supercross history, 50 career victories.
Yeah, for a season that we thought we were going to be spending a lot of time talking about Ryan Villapoto, we certainly have ended up spending a lot of time talking about James Stewart as of late, Jacob.
Yeah, we have. We've spent a lot of time talking about James Stewart. It's kind of contradictory because he's still 36 points down in the championship, which is more than a race for those of you who may not follow Supercross all the time. 25 points for a round win, but James Stewart with 5 of them this season, and Ryan Villapoto, though, still a race and a half in hand in the championship. So barring something crazy with 5 races to go, I'd say it's not quite a sure bet that we're going to be talking about RV1 at the champions table again, but it's better than average right now, certainly, Tom. But James Stewart at least taking the checkered flags away from the champion for sure right now.
Yeah, without a doubt, James Stewart is the story right now, and he's certainly winning the battles. And if he keeps winning battles, obviously he's going to end up stealing the war as well. So Villapoto really, I know that he talked about the fact that he can't really afford to make any big mistakes, but he's also got to start winning. So again, I think because, he really can't afford to give up any ground whatsoever. And of course, he got a break the other night because Ryan Dungey crashed on the final lap. So, Villapoto definitely got a little bit of help there, but James Stewart is just, you just can't say enough. I mean, again, we talk about this, it seems like every week on this show, how exciting this Supercross racing is getting, and this year seems to be one of its best years in a long, long time, if not ever, and 60,213 fans in St. Louis at the Dome there. Certainly a record-breaking crowd on hand as well, so I guess they agree with us.
Oh, yeah, they do. Edward Jones Field loved it Saturday night, and James Stewart delivered. So congratulations to the driver who seems to continue to rewrite the Supercross record books. James Stewart reaching the gold standard in AMA Supercross competition, grabs his 50th career victory, and now only trails Jeremy McGrath, who has 72 victories to his credit. And all this while there are rumors that he's going stock car racing in 2015 potentially. But those rumors will be followed up on a little more, I'm sure, after this season is over, because right now Stewart has the blinders on. He's looking for a championship, and right now we're looking for our final caution flag of the evening. When we come back, we'll break down the NHRA SummitRacing.com Nationals, talk about the winners there, and make our picks for this weekend in Texas. The madness rolls to conclusion when we come back. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Kyle Souza, and Tom Baker about to roll this show to the checkered flag here tonight. And as we get set to go, Tom, there is one more class that raced this weekend that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. I know we watched the Whelen Southern Modified Tour race fall to rain. We watched a World of Outlaws race fall to rain. We almost watched a couple of Pro Mazda and USF 2000 races fall to rain before some craziness and some wet weather driving in those. But the NHRA SummitRacing.com Nationals did not fall to rain in Sin City and Las Vegas. Certainly the weather was high, dry, and sunny out there in the desert, Tom, and couple of very interesting winners this weekend. How about for her second funny car win in 2014, second career win, Alexis DeJoria driving the Patron Cafe funny car machine. She's been on a roll the last three races, 2 wins in the last 3, her first 2 career wins ever, and I'd say all of a sudden she's bringing a new meaning to girl power because Courtney Force has not been outstanding this year in the funny car class.
No, not at all. However, it was actually the second time that 2 of the ladies have earned victories at the same NHRA event. Back a couple of years, Courtney Force and Erica Ender-Stevens did the job in Seattle, Coffee Town, and or Seahawks Town, I guess I should probably say now. So it's kind of interesting that this is only the second time it's happened, considering there have been a number of lady racers who are very competitive in the NHRA, but it was all in all a great weekend, and it's nice to see that at least they were able to get their races in when so many of the others couldn't. It was definitely not one of Mother Nature's nicest performances, for sure.
No, it was not in the end. But you talk about girl power, and you talked about two ladies going to victory lane, and the other one was, once again, Erica Enders-Stevens in pro stock. How about that? She grabs her 7th career victory with the Elite Motorsports Camaro, and Erica Enders actually getting a little extra payday for her efforts as well over the weekend. Not only did she get the Wally for going to victory on Sunday afternoon, she actually won the K&N Horsepower Challenge for the Pro Stock cars on Saturday afternoon, a little race within a race for some of the best in the Pro Stock class. 8 drivers vying for an additional payday, and she banked $50,000 for winning that race on Saturday, a total of $100,000 in bonus money over the weekend. So, Tom, talking about Elite Motorsports and Erica Enders-Stevens, she really brought home the dough on Sunday afternoon.
Well, I would do a rim shot, Jacob, but I didn't bring my drum set with me to the round table. But that was a good one. I'll give you credit for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And, not to be forgotten in all this, the top fuel class, the nitrous-breathing, fire-breathing top fuel dragsters. And I want to give a salute to the champion right here, 7-time top fuel champ Tony Schumacher. Finally, after a long drought, last June was the last time he had done it, goes back to victory lane, grabs a Wally, takes down a final round victory in his 126th career final round appearance. Tony Schumacher grabbing career win number 73. For those of you who are counting, that's better than half of the final rounds he's been in. Tony Schumacher's gone to victory lane and taken home that Wally trophy. Tom, this is exactly the kind of momentum the 7-time champion needed to get a championship possible championship run on the right track. Schumacher looking for an 8th Top Fuel World title this year, and a win never hurts.
No, it surely doesn't. And here again, we've been talking about all of the different types of racing and how much action and how entertaining it's been. It's very much the same with the NHRA, with all of the different winners that we've had, and the stories like this one with the dual victories by Alexis and Erica. And I just think that, again, it's for whatever reason, I think that, you have certain times in a sport when you just kind of look at it all and go, boy, magic, just magic. And so far, on several fronts, both small and large, this season has started off to be a magic motorsport season. And with, of course, all of the big signature races coming up between April and May with the icebreaker at Thompson, and you start thinking about May and Memorial Day weekend and all that brings, and just so many good things still to come. I mean, we're hardly getting started, and already we've had so much to talk about, which really makes shows like this a lot of fun because it's something new and exciting every week.
Yeah, it is. And as the old saying goes, just wait. You ain't seen nothing yet. And I have a feeling we have not seen the end of the magic yet this season, but I want to dust off our crystal balls. I know you've already been doing that, Tom, polishing yours after that Ben Rhodes call you made on Thursday, but I'm going to start with Kyle here on this one as we go to Texas this weekend. The Sprint Cup boys tackling the Texas Motor Speedway, and Texas unveiling Big Hoss there on the back straightaway for this weekend's 500-mile event on Sunday afternoon. Kyle, I know it's always hard to do, but there are the guys who are really good at Texas. Who do you like to take home this weekend's Duck Commander 500?
Well, Jacob, somebody that kind of surprised me yesterday and actually took the lead for a while in the Cup race was Greg Biffle. That 16 does not normally run well at Martinsville. Accustomed to that, he was in the top 5 in the lead for a little bit. He does run well at Texas, so I'm going to go with the 16 this weekend. The Biff goes back to victory lane in the Duck Commander 500 Sunday afternoon.
I'll go next, I guess, and I'm going to go with a guy who was not at all happy after Martinsville, not because he didn't run well, but because he didn't get the clock that he felt he deserved. And ultimately, we've talked about him a couple of times already tonight. He finished 3rd at Martinsville. He got his first nationwide victory at Texas, where we're going this weekend. he got his first Cup victory at Texas, where we're going this weekend. He came within a cup of fuel of winning at Las Vegas, finished second. My vote is on Steve Letarte and driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. to become the first driver to officially lock themselves into the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup with a second win in Texas. Tom, who do you like?
Well, I like your pick, but since you picked him and I have to go with my second pick. And so my second pick is for a guy who just loves running well at Texas in just about anything he drives. I'm going to go way out on a limb and pick Rowdy Busch to win the Sprint Cup race on Sunday in Texas.
What a shock. Rowdy Busch always good there, especially in the Nationwide car. He's won umpteen hundred Nationwide races at Texas. He's won a couple on the Cup side, too, so I wouldn't deny that Rowdy's at least going to be a contender before the afternoon is done. That's Sunday afternoon at Texas for the Duck Commander 500, but right now, we're done on the madness. That's the checkered flag on our 90 minutes of motorsports conversation, news, views, and interviews for Kyle Souza, Tom Baker, Stephen Ovens, Clint Miller, Joel Sebastianelli, and everybody that makes it happen here at Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Behind the microphones and behind the glass, this is your host, Jacob Seelman, inviting you to check out RaceChaserOnline.com for all the latest news from around the motorsports world, from NASCAR to open wheel to dirt track racing and more. Check us out every day for new audio and multimedia content, as well as the latest news from around every genre of the world of motorsports. And until Thursday night on the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, this is Jacob Seelman for Speed77 Radio, inviting you to keep it off the wall. Until we meet again, and wherever you're going to be this weekend, folks, have a safe racing weekend. So long!
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.